Shalom Mishpacha, peace be unto thee. This is Brother Ben Sedek Bontora, and today we are going to study Isaiah 53, which is speaking of the suffering Messiah. Let's begin. But first of all, there are many people who does not believe that the Almighty has a son. Well, we'll prove it to you from the Hebrew Tanakh, the so-called Old Testament or the Old Covenant. If you look at Mishle or Proverbs 30 verse 4, it states, "Who had ascended up into heaven or descended? Who had gathered the wind in his fist? Who had bound the waters in a garment? Who had established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name? If you can tell." So according to the Tanakh, the book of Mishle or Proverbs, the book of wisdom, the Almighty has a son. And the prophet is asking under divine inspiration, can you tell what is his name? Well, in the book of Isaiah 53, which we are going to study, it speaks of the suffering servant. And let's go through it right now. Isaiah 53, or Yeshayah 53, says, "Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of Yahweh revealed?" 800 years before the Messiah, the Almighty knew that the people, or I would say the elders of Israel, will not believe the report that they had concerning the Messiah, because he was rejected. Verse 2, "For he, the Messiah, shall grow up before him as a tender plant, and as a root out of dry ground. He hath no form nor comeliness, and when we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him." The Messiah will be a regular person. He won't be a person who will come first in esteem. He will come first as a sufferer. When you read the Brit Hadashah, the New Covenant, you'll see that the Messiah was a man who was outdoors, in the parks, in the field, in the beach, wherever the common people is. Verse 3, "He was despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid as if it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he had borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of Elohim, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are all healed." So this Messiah will suffer for his people. Now there are many people who state that this is speaking about the nation or the people of Israel. It cannot be, because Isaiah the prophet, he himself was an Israelite. And he was talking about this person suffering for the sake of his people. So that couldn't be Israel. Otherwise it will state, and Israel will be suffering for his people, Israel. It doesn't make any sense. Verse 6, "All we," include the Israelite and the Goyim, the Gentiles, "all we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and Yahweh had laid on him the iniquity of us all." So you see, this Messiah is a sin-bearing Messiah. This term, laying of the iniquity on us, as you go back to the book of Leviticus or YISRAEL, you'll see even on the Day of Atonement that the high priest have to take two goats. One, he will place his hand upon him and confess all the sins and iniquity of the people of Israel. Verse 7, "He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generations? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people was he stricken." Verse 8 is also intriguing once again, because here we see the Messiah will have no physical descent, no children, because he said, who can declare his generation? Why? Because he was cut off, he was executed, woe, for the sin of my people. Verse 9, "And he made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death, because he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth." Again, if this was talking about Israel, we read in the Torah or the Tanakh over and over how Israel as a people was considered by the Almighty as being stiff-necked, a backbiting people, a people who is always turning to their evil ways. As a matter of fact, he keep sending the prophets to tell them to return, return, return. Verse 10, "Yet it pleased Yahweh to bruise them. he had put him to grief, when thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin. He shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of Yahweh shall prosper in his hands. Now this is interesting because this person's soul, the scripture says, will be an offering for sin. And the Father will see, he shall prolong his days and he shall see his seed. What seed is he talking about? His work, his offspring. His offspring not as people, but his offspring in the sense of his work will continue. Because in the Brit Chadashah, the Messiah states, and you, that is followers, he said, you shall do greater works than me. So this is what he's talking about, his seed shall prosper. Verse 11, he shall see of the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied by his knowledge. Shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Once again, the scripture is identifying this as a person who shall bear the iniquities of his people. What people? The people of Israel. So once again, it could be Israel bearing the iniquity for his people, Israel. It does not make any sense. Verse 12, therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he had poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with the transgressors. If you read the Brit Chadashah, the Messiah was executed with two criminals. Because he had poured out his soul unto death, and he was numbered with transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. So right here we see that the Messiah is a sin-bearing person. There's no doubt about it. Now, another question is this. Does the Messiah has to come before a specific time? The answer is yes. As we turn to the book of one of the major prophets, Daniel 9:25, Daniel gave a vision. Daniel was given a vision, and the Malach, the messenger, the angel Gabriel, was explaining it to him. In Daniel 9:25 it states, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem until the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks. Let's pause right there. The decree that he's talking about, what Daniel was saying here is, there will be a certain time when they were in Babylon at this time, and he was saying at a specific time in Babylon, there will be a decree that will be given by a certain king to rebuild and restore Jerusalem. So Daniel is saying, when this decree is given, start to do the maths. And that maths come up to 483 years. This decree was first issued by Cyrus, or Koresh in the Hebrew, in March 14 of 445 BC. When they do the following maths, which I'm going to read shortly, it come up to 483 years. So when you do the maths, historians had shown us that it fulfilled to the date, the exact time of the birth of Messiah Yahushua in about 6 BCE. So let's go again, Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem until the Messiah, Hamashiach, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troubled times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the Prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolation are determined. Now, historically, this had happened. In 70 of the Common Era, General Titus had came with his Roman legion. They had burned the temple to the ground. And this is confirmed also by Flavius Josephus, otherwise known as Mattathiah Bar Yosef. So here we see, according to the scripture, the Messiah had to die before 70 of the Common Era, before the temple was destroyed. That's prophetic. And it's interesting because it's saying in Daniel 9:25 that Daniel 9:26 that the Messiah will be cut off, not for himself. Once again, we are seeing that this is the sin-bearing Messiah. Study with an open mind and accept him today. Yahushua HaMashiach. Shalom Aleichem.